Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my February wrap-up, which I'm recording at the end of March. So, I didn't read much in February, and I do think that I actually talked about a lot of the books that I was reading throughout the month of February during the wool gathering videos that I released, but I like to have some continuation through certain playlists on this channel, and so I thought that I would share my full thoughts here. The first book that I read in February was a reread for me and the beginning of, I can't call it a project, it's just that I've fallen into the mood of reading this author and I haven't steered away from it yet. And this book that I read is Emotionally Weird by Kate Atkinson. This book came into the charity shop and I read it because there is a certain amount of experimentation with form in this book, in that you have stories within stories. There's a creative writing class and it's emotionally weird, but it's an incredibly weird book as well. A lot of people who read Kate Atkinson don't seem to care for this book. Sorry if you can hear Sally milling about on the ground. So, in this book, we have a character whose name I have forgotten because I have read quite a few Kate Atkinsons since this one, but I believe it was Effie. And then you have her mother, who is not her mother, and we meet this unreliable narrator who is in a creative writing class in Dundee, but she's failing to attend all of her classes. She's not handing in her coursework, and she's telling this story to her mother, who is not her mother, who she is with on this island. And there's something postmodern, but it mocks postmodernism. It mocks creative writing courses and it mocks writing. And to me, it's a rather funny, humorous read that when you've attended creative writing courses, it fits, and it's told with this humour and this almost adoration for language. There were certain lines in there that I adored because I could imagine them being spoken in a sitcom of the era in which this was written, and I was just thrilled to revisit this one and remember what I'd enjoyed about it years before, but also from a craft level, looking at it and taking aspects from the book to influence my own writing and how I'm going to progress with my next novel. But I admit that this book isn't for everyone, and I think that a lot of people would not care for this book, and in terms of Kate Atkinson there might be better entry points. The next book I read was also by Kate Atkinson. It was Life After Life, and this is a book that I have tried to get into many times. I've wanted to read it because Joy from the Writers Group has always said that it's a book that she's gone back to and she's read passages from and admired the writing. And I think the furthest I ever got was about 200 pages into it. Well, because I was in this mood to read Kate Atkinson in February, indeed I'm still in that mood, I just couldn't get enough of the prose. Now, with this one, having read another book that you'll hear about in my March wrap-up, Life After Life takes certain aspects from the novel Human Croquet, in which the character of Ursula will die and the story resets itself, and then it's almost like a choose your own adventure. If Ursula takes this path, then this will happen in her life. If she takes this path, then something else will happen. It's also a great war novel, and in allowing all these different paths to happen for Ursula, we get to see all the different aspects of life for women during the Second World War. I usually don't like war novels, but there was something about this novel that it might have been the writing, it might have been this newfound adoration for Kate Atkinson this year that I'm unable to avoid. But I adored this book. I didn't think I was going to like this aspect, this almost what I thought was going to be repetitive. But there's a dramatic irony in the fact that we know the way certain things go for the character if she takes certain paths, and we know how things have gone for her. And also the thing was, the character begins to get up this almost deja vu over situations and knows to avoid them because it's almost like she's got this precognitive ability, having lived that life before. And I was glad that Atkinson chose to actually show that the character does remember these other lives, and it's not just us getting to see a life constantly being reset and this repetitive note. And something I've noticed, having read a few of Kate Atkinson's books now, is that there is a huge focus on family and the weird intricacies of family and the way that they communicate with one another. And I am very much enjoying that. Coming from a very large family myself, I like the way that Atkinson has been examining families throughout all of her works. Life After Life, for me, having read Human Croquet now, it doesn't have all of the humour and quirkiness of her early works, but it's more staid, and I can see the development of her craft as a writer, and it's very surreal sometimes to juxtapose those two books against each other, because they are doing stuff that's similar, but at the same time, Life After Life almost feels like a culmination of all this experimentation that Atkinson has ever done in her work before. Next, I read my own book, Indisputably Doris, for part of the Literally Doris read-along, as hosted by myself and Charlie of Charlie Brooke Reads. And I felt so sorry for the character of Alf when rereading this book. Alf is Errol's best friend, and I'd forgotten a particular event that happens to the character in this book when writing Royally Doris, and knowing what's going to happen to this character in subsequent books, and I felt awful for the torture that I'm about to put this character through. But Indisputably Doris is the book to me that I've always felt a bit of protectiveness over, because, as I've said before, when it came to Our Doris, I was hugely successful with that book. I don't like to blow my own trumpet here, but I was doing very well with events, and it was like a month didn't go by, a fortnight didn't go by that I wasn't doing an event for the book, and people really responded well to it. I had to put in tons and tons of orders when I first brought that book out, in the 2 years leading up to Indisputably Doris. With Indisputably Doris, unfortunately, as documented on this channel in 2017, not many people turned up to my events, and I booked a whole host of events for National Libraries Week that year, and they weren't well attended, and I didn't really sell that many copies, and the upset from that led me to decide that I was going to take the break from Doris, which ultimately I think helped Doris in the long run and led to a very strong final book in that series. But reading Indisputably Doris and seeing what was going on with the characters and what's going on emotion-wise, to then have Royally Doris and think about it as the culmination, which I'll talk about when we do our live show, it was just a great experience to go back and read something that I'd perhaps forgotten aspects of. And one day we're actually going to get some proper idea as to what Mrs Cribbin's real name is, because I think I've changed Mrs Cribbin's name about 4 times in 3 books. And then I read The Restaurant. Well, I didn't. I listened to the audiobook of The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams, and will admit that listening to the audiobook was a much better thing to do when it came to this series. I didn't listen to the next book in the series this month like I planned to do, but the books really do work better in the audio format, and having Martin Freeman read them, he just does it incredibly well. He has a way with accents, and sometimes I couldn't even believe that it was the same narrator. He captured the humour for me. It was just exactly what I wanted, and was a much better, more involved experience listening to it than it had been reading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But I do think I'm going to get a copy and read it as well, because, I don't know. Sorry, that was a white van coming up the road and crashing into the curb. I've developed a minor obsession with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at the moment. I have plans to listen to the series. I've purchased the TV series from the 80s or the 70s, whenever it came out, and I'm planning on listening to the radio plays as well this year, so it suits my sensibilities somewhat. Humorous, science fiction, yeah. Then I read Doris Ahoy, another book of mine, and this was nice to revisit because this was my return to Doris after working on the children's book for a year and then, well, basically taking a year out. Well, it was longer than a year really, because I worked on the children's book from November 2017 till March of 2018, and then from March until August I was on An Heir to Murder, and then I took some time away from that before eventually going back to Doris Ahoy. And so again, it's been a break. Take a lot of breaks. I don't know why I take so many breaks. I'm worse than a bloody Kit Kat over here. But this was what I call the summer holiday novel. I never thought I'd be one to do the summer special. I always thought it'd be a Christmas special or something like that. But Doris Ahoy was me taking Doris and Harold and transplanting them to a different setting. And I'd written the entire book before thinking about keeping up appearances when Hyacinth goes on the QE2. But what can you do? Keeping up appearances, I think I just stole from that television show a lot. And Why Wouldn't I is a fantastic show. Then I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, but I won't be talking about that here because I read that for the BookTube prize. So if I do make a reviews and rankings video of that, then I will talk about it in there. And finally, I read Vita and Nostra by authors whose names I have unfortunately forgotten, and I have unhauled the book. I was enjoying this book. It took me a while to finish this book because of other things that I got into reading, but for the most part I was enjoying it. And then I got to the end of it, and for the most part I thought that it was a really nice, dark fantasy novel with a different mythology than I was used to, set in a different part of the world than I was used to, and probably drawing on folklore and tales that I didn't know about. And there was a discussion about the love of language, and there was this science fiction aspect to it as well. And then we had the ending. An ending that didn't really make any sense, that didn't provide any resolution to the story. And at first I thought, well, this means that there can be resolution because there is a sequel. And there is a sequel, but I still don't think that it's going to provide the resolution. And unfortunately, I'm always of the opinion that I have to have faith in the author for me to continue reading a series. And the way that this book ended, and aspects of this novel throughout, in terms of characterization and all of that, and in actions, and I have to garner some faith in the writer, that the writer is going to be able to complete this narrative in a fashion that I think works well. And unfortunately, I didn't think that the authors would be able to do that with the sequel. I didn't have enough faith in them, and so I unhauled the book, and it's just going to have to sit there as one of those disappointing reads, and these are probably authors whose work I will not be returning to in future. And them's the books. I avoided making this video for so long because I felt like it was such a short, disappointing wrap-up, and yeah. And so March was really heavily focused on reading, and I did read a lot more in March, and will probably record a video at some point. This video has been recorded on a Friday evening because my parents have both just gone out to collect my father's Land Rover. So I just had a few minutes in which to steal some time to record this video. So there we go. Those are the books that I read in February. If you have read any of the books and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.